Been looking forward to talking to our next guest, Fletcher Mackel, who is down at WDSU. We usually go to him to get some insight on the city in New Orleans, whether it's Pelicans, what's going on around the city. A very sad day for Fletcher, his brother Travers, and the crew over at WDSU as they lost a great man in Stefon Cage Sr., a guy who always had a smile on his face. He was always personable and talking when we'd see him at press conferences, but he had he was the cameraman for longtime cameraman for Fletch. So, Fletch, I know that this is a tough time for you and everybody at WDSU. Thank you for finding the time. Our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I always love coming on y'all's show. Yeah, and it was Stefon, great guy, Baton Rouge native, worked in Baton Rouge for a long time, and then has been with us for a few decades now.
Wow.
And he had a long battle with cancer. And it really was a nice outpouring of support yesterday. People that, knew him, he wasn't really just a happy-go-lucky guy, and he always loved covering LSU. And so he really enjoyed being in Tiger Stadium. So, a lot of sympathies and prayers for his family and people that knew him.
Rest in peace, Steph Cage. He was a great man. Fletcher Mackel joining us here from WDSU and Off the Bench, ESPN, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Alexandria. No easy way to transition to that into the news, but New Orleans, obviously right now with the Saints coming off of the draft and where they stand, they lost Noah Spence in an off-season training activity where Sean Payton had suspended that until training camp starts. How do you imagine the NFL reacts, and maybe even franchises, when players get hurt away from the facility when they don't have OTAs or off-season training going on?
Yeah, it's just a weird situation because I think that the Saints aren't unique in the fact that guys are training on their own and working out on their own. And it's always surprised me a little bit. I mean, look, Drew Brees is out in California working out, and he's worked out with the same trainer for over a decade now, Todd Durkin. And there's a group of guys that he works out with. I'm almost surprised in professional sports, going through all sports. A lot of basketball players in the offseason, LA has kind of become the hub for the NBA offseason. I'm almost surprised in a way that you don't see more injuries away from training facilities because, I hate to use this analogy, in the old days, because it's not like I'm that old, but, guys played their sport and then they take off or they have a second job. Now it's train year round because their sport is so intense and they have to be so physically perfect at it that you don't see more training injuries away from facilities in the off season. So what happened to Noah Spence is terrible, but I don't think it's, something that is completely uncommon in the world of professional sports.
So sticking with the Saints then, some of the other recent news here, Fletch, Saints, the whole Larry Warford saga, releasing Larry Warford after drafting Ruiz. Did you see this coming, and what do you think how do you feel about how that Saints line sits today when you look at the roster?
T-Bob, I kind of find some humor in this. I'm the 5'10", 150-pound guy, and you're the former offensive lineman, and you're asking me about the offensive line. So I enjoy this conversation.
It shows how much I respect your football knowledge, Fletch. Almost as much as I respect your NBA trade machine knowledge.
It's like you asking me for hair advice.
Yeah.
So let me say this. So I will gloat a little bit here.
Okay.
I actually 2 days before the draft put Cesar Ruiz as my pick to the Saints in my mock draft.
Oh.
But you mentioned the mock trades. I also like mock drafts, and I put him in there because I felt like Sean Payton had been tipping his hand all off season. Every time he talked, he kept saying for positions of upgrade, interior offensive line. And Larry Warford was pretty horrific in that playoff game against Minnesota. And for better or worse, I think that they laid the blame at Larry Warford's feet, not Andres Pete, because I don't think Andres Pete was very good either. But I think that they looked at Warford. Pete was their guy. They drafted him. He's younger. He could still play tackle a little bit. I think they just looked at Warford and said, "We're done with you. You were one of the potential problems on the offensive line, specifically in that playoff game when Minnesota ate our lunch." And so I just kind of saw it coming. And I thought that this is the reason why I looked at it. The Saints picking where they were at 24, I think you looked at it and you said, it was a weak draft for defensive ends, and they could have used some depth there, but it wasn't a great draft there. Do they take the fifth best cornerback? Do they take the fifth best wide receiver? Or do they take the best interior offensive lineman? And the Saints have always been about best available, so I just felt like this is a spot where they could potentially get better. And look, I thought McCoy was a good pick last year, and he was a really solid rookie. Yep. I think Ramchek's a stud. Obviously, Armstead. I think Ruiz, just watching the film, talking to people. I mean, this guy started every game basically for 3 full seasons, and I think he was penalized 3 times. I mean, he didn't allow a pressure last season. So I think it's hard to argue with the pick. Now, what is he going to be? I don't know. But I certainly think since Jeff Ireland got here with the Saints, they have had more of an emphasis on building in the trenches with guys like Sheldon Rankin and McCoy and Ramchek and now Ruiz. I think they have put a serious value on building David Onyemata, even the interior of their offensive and defensive line. So look, 32 teams think they drafted, a ton of Hall of Famers. Hope springs eternal right now. But I do think that the Saints, it's hard to argue with their draft success in recent years. So I like what they did with Ruiz.
We're talking to the legendary owner of the Mackel Maine, Fletcher Mackel, WDSU Sports. Fletch, so, okay, you mentioned the fact that in the offseason, LA's kind of become a hub for the NBA. Well, it looks like the new hub is going to be Disney World in Orlando. Fletch, tell me, come on, how is the NBA? They know they want him on the stage. How do you think the NBA is going to get Zion worked into this mix, or do you think they just cut down to 16?
Well, let me say this. I think they want Zion in Orlando because they want to return and have all their stars, and there's definitely a Zion effect. Yeah. Having him there means people are going to watch. I think, one, the NBA should just have 16 teams, go right to the playoffs, because here's the thing. This isn't about experimentation and trying new things. This is about finishing a season during a global pandemic as clean and easily as possible. I think the bubble city is foolish in Orlando. I think waiting until August is the height of stupidity. And look, I love the NBA. I always jokingly say that some people find religion in their lives and become born again. In 2002, I found the NBA in my life and love covering nothing more than professional basketball. Okay? But so here's the thing. I think Adam Silver is the best commissioner in all of professional sports. I love the fact that the NBA is at the forefront of social issues and what they do. I just think they've had some missteps here. That why wait until August? I mean, do you realize that the NBA, if these reports are correct, and they don't start until August in a bubble situation, Major League Baseball may have started around the 4th of July if they can figure out what they're figuring out. Training camps for NFL will start the last week of July, but the NBA doesn't want to return until August. That is the height of insanity to me. Doing it in the bubble city, I'm still not sure about that. So, and then the one thing I do hope they do is, look, I would love to see Zion and the Pelicans make a run and have a chance at the end, but I think it would be better just to bring the 16 playoff teams, get this done, crown a champion, and look towards next season.
Look, unprecedented times, Fletcher, calls for unprecedented solutions. And we're going to figure out a way to get Zion in Orlando, whether you're on board or not. Now, in all seriousness, though, you mentioned that you don't feel that the bubble city is maybe the play or realistic. So what would you do? Like, if you were in the NBA shoes, how would you look to solve this?
Look, let me say this. I understand the bubble city. You can put everybody together. You can say, hey, no travel. We're not going to fly these guys around the country. We're almost in an isolation type situation. But they're going to Disney World, and Disney is going to open in June. So is it really isolated that you're going to a place where you can say, hey, we're on the campus? Yeah, but there's thousands of people in and around the Orlando area. So sure, you eliminate the flight and you put everybody kind of in one specific location, but they're around people that are coming to visit Disney World. So I don't love that. I do think there's a way to do it if you went straight to the playoffs and you had Eastern and Western Conference where you could put teams in their home markets with no fans and still have a viable finish to the season. If you held the playoff, baseball wants to return. They can't get out of their own way from a financial standpoint, but they want to play baseball games starting in July in home cities without fans. Why can't the NBA do that? Training camps may open around the NFL with 32 different markets, maybe no fans at training camps, but those teams are going to have training camps at their own facilities. I just don't understand why the NBA, if the NBA was starting right now, I could say, yes, the bubble city, keep everybody safe. But if you're talking about a bubble city in August, I just don't get that.
Sports anchor from WDSU down in New Orleans, Fletcher Mackel, joining us here. He's on Twitter at FletcherWDSU. You saw Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski join the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and your reaction was what?
Tampa Bay's a playoff team. I mean, I think I think Bruce Arians is a really good coach. So former Saints head coach and former Colts head coach Jim Mora is with us at WDSU. He's been with us for 10 years. He also just turned 85, and he is drinking from the fountain of youth.
He looks amazing.
I know he looks great. He's still sharp as a tack, and so he's great. But so Bruce Arians was on his staff here in New Orleans. So he's talked about Bruce Arians when he was with the coordinator in Pittsburgh, when he took over in Indianapolis, when their head coach had cancer, when he became the head coach of the Cardinals. He loves Bruce Arians. So I've heard about Bruce Arians for years and years and years. He and Mora have a great relationship. I think he's a good coach. Obviously, Brady's the greatest of all time. Look, I still think the Saints are better. Top to bottom, the Saints roster is better. No one will convince me of that. But having Brady, I think, makes Tampa Bay a legitimate playoff team. But the NFC's loaded. I mean, when you look at how good the NFC is, Minnesota's good, Green Bay's good. I think Chicago's going to have a bounce back. San Francisco's good. We're not even people don't even talk about Seattle, and they're really, really good.
Yeah.
I really think the Rams can have a bounce back. Arizona's on the come up. And then look, last year, the East was a joke with kind of the fight to see who's going to sneak in. But I think Philly, if they're healthy, they're really good. Dallas is a wild card to me. I mean, the NFC, there's a ton of great teams. And I could certainly see Tampa. I don't think Tampa's a championship contender. I don't think they're going to the Super Bowl this year in their home city of Tampa, but I could see them getting into the playoffs this year as a wild card team.
Fletcher, last one. We'll get you out of here. It's a listener question. Derek from the parish wants to know, he and his wife just bought a French Quarter apartment. Can Mayor Cantrell keep the cars out of the quarter?
Derek from the parish is an awesome dude, by the way. I went to high school with a guy, a Derek from St. Bernard Parish that, I love to death. And let me say this right now. There's a lot of crazy ideas in New Orleans. I wish they were crazy smart and crazy good ideas. That is not a crazy good idea. Maybe Bourbon Street is a pedestrian mall, but not the entire French Quarter is a walking-only area. So no, Mayor Cantrell cannot keep the cars out of the quarter, Derek.
Great to hear from you, Fletch. We'll catch up again soon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Take it easy, man.
Fletcher Mackel from WDSU checking in from New Orleans.